Hello, hello.
Oh, yeah. Hi, how are you?
Hi there.
Hi.
I see you now.
Okay.
It is so fun to get to see these people that I see their names and I don't know them yet.
Okay. I'm glad that I see you.
Yeah, glad you could be with me today. Sometimes we have bunches of people and sometimes we have one. And if we,
only me today?
no, well, right now, but you know
Okay.
what? You are just as important as 20. So we will go through these forms with you. We either do it with one-on-one or we do it with whoever comes in. Sometimes they come in later too, but right now it's going to be me and you. So
Okay.
tell me a little bit about you. You're brand new in real estate?
Yes, I just got the license on April.
Okay, good.
I joined Keller Williams on May.
Good.
And this is very first training class for me.
Oh, good.
Actually,
So you're getting introduced to the forms today. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I didn't know that the training is going on by June. I just got email yesterday.
Good.
That's how I found the class.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, we try to do these forms classes every Thursday from 1 to 3 or 2:30, whatever time we finish. But 1 week, like the first week, it's the North Carolina listing forms. And the second Thursday, it's the North Carolina buyer forms.
Okay.
Then we switch to South Carolina because we have a lot of South Carolina agents. So the third and fourth Thursdays are the South Carolina listings and South Carolina buyers. So then every month that's kind of our cycle right now to go through. So and you can imagine there is no way we can cover all the listing forms in one session and all the buyers in a session. So we want to introduce you to the most, I shouldn't say the most important, but the things that are that have to be in the contract, and the listing agreement. We will talk about that more in depth today, because obviously those agreements, those agency agreements and buyer agency agreements, those are the important documents for you because that's your employment. When you get that signed, they want you to be their agent, so that's really important to you. So you can check the calendar on KWB resources. Have you been on that site yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, so look at KWB for Keller Williams Valentine resources.com. And that there's an office calendar. You'll see when you log in on the dashboard at the top, there's a banner and you'll see office calendar. And so anytime you want to check a class, if there's a Zoom class available, the link will be on that calendar. In case you miss the email.
Oh, sure.
Or maybe an email doesn't go out. Sometimes we sometimes we miss it. So you want to just make sure to check that really any day, that you can have some time to go to class, which is good. But the KWB resources is it's really our way of communicating or the things that we have stored, like some general forms and some things, some forms that might not be in your DocuSign program. Have you gotten into DocuSign very much yet?
No.
Yeah, well, the DocuSign program, you will want to make sure to learn that program. And we have tech classes that Leah does. So look for the classes or anything that says DocuSign or Command. The technology class, because Leah and her sister Jules do the technology in our office, and they're the people that you want to reach out to on a technology issue. I gotta tell you, I'm not the one on technology.
Okay, no worries.
Just admit it right up front. No, I can do what I need to do, but as far as like I say, you want to talk to the people who really know it, and they have a lot of YouTube videos that will help, you know, so that you can watch that video on your time. But their classes are also on Zoom, or you can go into the training room. Boy, it feels good to be able to go back into the training room. For so many, almost 2 years, we didn't have classes, you know, in person. So it really is good now to be able to go into the training room and do those classes and you know, feel the community and ask questions that, you know, in person. So, but watch for your technology classes specifically. Have you gotten into your Ignite yet?
Yeah.
Good. So that's one of the foundational classes. Good. So, but like I said, today we're going to kind of look at some of these forms, and please feel free to interrupt me if you have a question on any of the things we're going through. And I'm just going to kind of go through them. And what's your email? And I'll just email you the packets that we're going through.
Okay, good. Okay. So my personal, I haven't received Keller Williams' email yet. So please send me email. Yeah. The Choi, CHOI, family, FAMILY, 2006.
2006?
Yes, 6 at gmail.com.
2006. Okay.
Yeah, 2006 at gmail.com.
Okay. Let me see if I can keep from losing you. Y'all hang in there now. I'm going to try to send that to you. Okay, let's see. Hold on just a minute. That would be good for you to have in your hand when you, let's see. Well, that didn't do it. Hold on a minute. Okay, I just sent them. Let's make sure you got them.
Yeah, hold on. Not yet.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you repeat my email address one more time? Yeah.
CHOI family 2006 at gmail.com.
Yes, that is correct.
So let's just see if it comes in.
I just received that. So okay. Yeah. I think I'd better to print out, right?
Right.
Okay. Just give me, so many pages, 31 pages.
But you don't have to print them out. You can, can you just put them there on your, I'm going to show you on my screen.
Oh, okay.
So, but if you want to, you'll be able to look, in fact, you don't have to leave your, you can, okay. Now let's see if I can get back. All right. Look, we're back live. Wow. I'm amazed every time it works. Okay, now let's see if I can share with you and let's kind of work through these. All right. I believe it's this one here. Oh, we've got forms and we've got you and me. Can you see my forms? Good. All right. Let's go. Now that is, I need to go to, I'm going to go to the pre-listing folder first, and we're going to kind of work through it. Let me go all the way up to the front. When you start working with a seller or buyer, really, you want to have about 5 or 6 forms already put in a folder. You can have it in a, you know, a manila folder or a white Keller Williams folder, or you can have it in your forms program in a folder that you just send out. When you're first talking to that client, there are some forms that the Real Estate Commission wants you to give to them. There are 3 forms, and I'm going to show you those 3 forms. And then there's some other information that prepares them and gets them ready to start wanting to list their house. And so we call that a pre-listing package, because you don't have to be with them to go through this form. These forms are things that you want them to read even before you sit down with them to go through the listing agreement. So all of these I've put in one folder, which is what you'll see it titled is the North Carolina pre-listing forms. So that's what I'm going through right now. You'll see also, see the watermark sample. There's a watermark on here. Only realtors who are members of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission's Realtor Association, it's called NCAR, it's the North Carolina State Association of Realtors. They are the ones who copyright, they write and copyright the forms that we use. These forms generally have some changes every year in July. So we probably will see a few changes. I'm not aware of anything major this year, but as soon as I know, I'll let you all know. But the point is, you cannot give these forms to someone else to use. And therefore, when we give these forms out to a seller or a buyer before we go into an agency agreement, it has to have the word sample written on it. Because again, you can't give it to them to use, but this is so they can read and know what you're going to ask them to sign. So this is the offer to purchase. This is what will be a sales agreement that eventually, when you get that house for them, they'll be filling this out. Now it's a 13, 14 pages. And again, every page has the word sample or the watermark sample on it. We're not going to go through this form today because we'll go through it next week with buyers. But right now, just to show you, this is the form that needs to be in the pre-listing package. And again, watch the word sample. Another thing you want to watch for on forms, see this date right here down the bottom right. It says copyright 7/2021. That was last July. Now come July this year, we will have it copyrighted 2022, and all these forms will need to be used that has the copyright 2022. So just so you're aware, we've only got 1 more month to use these. And when we do have a change of forms, they usually give us about 60 days to change. Now, that is the end of, Lordy, well, it's 15 pages now. Okay, the second form is this one. This is called professional services disclosure. I'm going to touch a little bit on that in a few minutes, but this form is a very good form to make sellers aware of what a buyer is going to be inspecting and what the buyer will need to have access to the house and the grounds for. this form is not one that we require sellers to sign, but we want sellers to be aware that buyers are going to be doing these inspections when they get under contract. And when you have a buyer, this is a required form in our office. All right. It's a worksheet. It's a worksheet that you can determine who's going to order. If, let's say, if you're going to have a home warranty, if the buyer or seller is not offering the home warranty, then it's waived. So you're going to get initials here. If either one of them are going to select it, the initials would go here. Then you've got to say who orders it, either you as the agent or the client. The client needs to give you the authority to order it. And right here is who you're going to order it from. And again, I'm going to go over it in just a little bit more detail, but that's about all the explanation you need to give to a seller. Let's go down here. It's a 3-page form, I believe. Now, the next form is really ties into that, because a lot of folks don't know what goes into a home inspection. I don't know, you may have not had one at your house, or maybe you just bought a house and you do have one. The home inspections is it's kind of scary for a lot of people, because we try to maintain our houses well, but sometimes we just don't know what the condition is. So these home inspections can be pretty scary. This document that's in a page form right now, questions and answers on home inspections, that is very simple for you to be able to email or send through your forms programs to your client. There's also a really nice brochure, says the same thing, but it's in a brochure form. A lot of agents, if they're going to put all this material in a folder and give it to the client or the seller, they like to have the brochure. But again, it just distinguishes it from the other paper that they got. But just to know, it does come in 2 formats. This being the one that you can email or send through the document program. Now, those are the 3 documents that the Real Estate Commission expects you to get in the hands of the buyer and or the seller. Now, the other thing, this is really, really important. The sellers will need to complete a residential property disclosure. It's called Residential Property and Owners Association Disclosure. This Residential Property and Owners Association combined 2 forms. A few years ago, they combined it. There is still a separate form for an Owners Association disclosure. Every now and then, you're going to have some exemptions to the required form of the residential property disclosure. All sellers are required, even if they are, there may be a landlord, they may have never lived in the house and they want to tell you, I've never lived there, so I don't have to give you a disclosure. And you said, well, I beg to differ. I know you haven't lived there, but the Real Estate Commission, the law says, and this is not a rule of the Realtors Commission, it is a law. Anytime you see this right here, this seal, that means it comes from the lawmakers. It does not come, and I shouldn't say just our Real Estate Commission, but a lot of things that come from the Real Estate Commission are specific to realtors. This is a law. So if you have someone who wants to sell for sale by owner, they're going to have this too. That has to be because a for sale by owner is not an exempt category. There are 4 categories of exemptions. One is a foreclosure, one is an estate, one is new construction, and the other is like a family member who has been living in the house and is purchasing the house, maybe a grown child from their parents, or vice versa, or maybe it's a divorce, or there's a lot of different ways that you would have family members or someone living in the home that would not be required to do the residential property disclosure. But primarily it's those 4 categories. And every now and then you'll have a property that is exempt from the residential property disclosure, but there is an HOA in the neighborhood. So if they are exempt from the residential property disclosure, but still need to disclose the HOA information, there is a separate form for that. All that to say, right now, it's all included in one form, but just know if you have an exemption to use the other form. This is quite in-depth. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at one of these during your pre-licensing or not. The residential property disclosure, I tell you right now, we are having so many threats of lawsuits and some lawsuits if the seller does not represent the condition of the house accurately. All right. You can't, about every day I get an email or a telephone call that says the seller didn't disclose this, or the seller misrepresented whatever. Anytime you hear that word misrepresentation or misrepresented, that's a legal term. That is not something we deal with as realtors. So that would be something that would have to go to an attorney to settle, and possibly to court. We can't determine misrepresentation. But right now, in order for some of these people to try to get their DDFs back, their due diligence fees, they're claiming misrepresentation. And remember, misrepresentation is a legal term, and it requires an attorney and often the court to determine if it is indeed misrepresentation. So you want your sellers to be as upfront as they can. You want to give the seller guidance and say, I can't fill this out for you. You have to fill it out. Realtors cannot put pencil or pen to paper. It's only the sellers that can fill this out, because they are the ones that are representing the property as it is. So what you want to do is you might want to be available to talk to them when they're filling it out. And if you know the answer as far as how to help them determine what to check, go ahead and help them. But you just don't answer for them, okay? And if you don't know the answer and they don't know the answer, use this typical line, I'll find out for you. So you're welcome to call your coach or call your T group leader or call me, and we'll try to help you to answer the question. I had an unusual question. Actually, it was just yesterday. One of the agents, let's see, they were supposed to close today, I believe, and something came up on the title work that was going to keep. No, it was a drainage issue. That's what it was. The neighbor had let them know that there was some drainage issue from this property that was causing her problems, and she let them know that she had contacted an attorney and to correspond with the attorney, because it wasn't listed on the residential property disclosure that there was any drainage issues. Well, according to the seller, there wasn't a drainage issue. The issue was the neighbor's issue. And so again, I had to say, because there is an attorney been contacted in this, you are not to be in touch with that neighbor. And the seller had no responsibility to put the neighbor's problem on their on their residential property disclosure. So we put it back in the closing attorney's hands and let them figure it out today. All that to say is sometimes it's hard to discern what the answer is, but as long as the seller doesn't know a problem, then he says yes, he would put no on this next page here. If he does know a problem, I got to tell you, it's a lot better for him to go ahead and write it, that there is a problem, disclose it, so that the buyer doesn't get mistrusting of the seller. When the buyer looks at it and he said, maybe he said there was some cross space issues, we've had it fixed. Invoices are available upon request, then that means, as far as the seller knows, there's no problem. However, when the inspector would go under that house and saw some work being done, the inspector is going to say, well, there's some recent problem here. You better check it out. And if you've already put it on the residential property disclosure, then it's not a surprise. It doesn't look to the buyer like the seller's trying to cover up something. So I always tell the agents to err on the side of disclosure. I'd rather disclose something and need it than not disclose it and cause mistrust from the buyer. So another thing, it does tell you in all this verbiage on here, that if the seller chooses to check no representation, that's his right. He does not have to disclose it, but he suffers the consequences if he doesn't. See on all these little interior boxes, here's your yes and no or no representation in regards to it, but don't miss all these little interior boxes too, okay? There's a lot of boxes that need to be checked on the interior, and that sometimes is what you'll need to work with the seller on filling out. But if you know of a problem in the house and the seller says, I don't want you to tell anybody that we have standing water in the crawl space, and the seller says, I'm going to check no representation, and you're going to counsel him that it probably would be better to disclose it and then know that it's going to have to be addressed because the inspector is going to find it. But let me show you what you also have to show the seller. Back on page 1, this right here. As a realtor, if you know there is a material fact such as water standing in the crawl space, you have to tell. Even if the seller chooses not to tell, you have to tell, because that would be a violation of the real estate law. And so you could be, a complaint could be filed at you with the real estate commission. So you are responsible if you know something is a material fact that's wrong with the property that does need to be disclosed, even if the seller chooses not to. All right. And you can, like I say, you can put it in black and white, just so right here, so he knows, so the seller knows. Now, when you take the listing, I would suggest that you have this completed at the time you put it in MLS, and you're going to attach this in MLS. Therefore, the agents who are making offers don't have to chase you down, and you don't have to email them a copy. You can attach it right in MLS. So when you go through your classes with MLS, it will you will be able to. They'll show you how to do that. Okay. I'm not going to go through that part of it today. So this is why I put this in the pre-listing package, so the seller can start looking at it. The seller can start filling it out if he wants to, but he knows that that's going to have to be filled out when you put it on the market. And there's a section in the listing agreement, in the offer to purchase, that they have to attest to the fact that they got the residential property disclosure before they wrote the offer. So there's a timing in there. Also, there is the timing on it. If for whatever reason the residential property disclosure is not ready when you get an offer on the house, the buyer has up to 3 days from the time that residential property disclosure is delivered to them to terminate the contract based on something that's in that disclosure that they didn't know. So that's kind of critical. Another reason we urge and insist that the residential property disclosure be ready, so when the buyer's agent can pull it off the MLS, the buyer can have a copy. They don't have to agree with it. They don't have to do anything with it, but have a copy. That way, before they write an offer. Okay, let's scoot on down here a little bit. like I say, all these blocks are so important. Let me show you one that tricks up people a lot. Right here, it says the dwelling's exterior walls are made of what type of material? This composite hardboard right here, that's what you'll hear people use the term masonite siding. Masonite siding, have you heard that? It's a compressed wood, and you want to make sure that if it does have masonite siding, that you check that box for composite hardboard. All right. Obviously, you know what brick is, you know what wood is, you know what stone is, you know what vinyl is. We don't see very much synthetic stucco anymore. We did for years, but we don't see. But if it obviously if it's synthetic stucco, you'd want to check it. But right here, that's the one that seems to cause the most concern because it doesn't say masonite, and that's what we're expecting it to say. Come on down here. Obviously the furnace, you need to know what, if it's a furnace with a gas unit, then it would be furnace, or if it's a heat pump, which is electric heat or air, or it may be a baseboard heat. Some older homes have the baseboard, but it has to be a system that is throughout the house. And again, the age of the system, watch this real carefully. For whatever reason, people, when they buy a unit or buy something that they think is their new HVAC, they will say, well, I got a new unit. And your first question is, could you possibly dig out that invoice for me? Because when they say new, you want to make sure that it's within the last 3 months. New doesn't mean I bought it 5 years ago. I've had my house 20 years, so to me it's new because it's 5 years old. And we get stuck on that a lot of times. So you want to make sure to find out if they truly did buy it 3 months ago before you advertise that it's new. The other thing to watch out for, sometimes they buy, and I see this most often, they have to buy a new AC, an air conditioning compressor, but they don't buy a new furnace. So they say, I bought a new HVAC. No, they didn't. They bought a new AC. They did not buy the furnace, the heat unit. And the furnace might be 29 years old, but the AC was bought, 6 months ago. So clarify that. And if they do happen to have the invoice, then it would clarify it, right? And maybe if they don't have, they might even call the company that did the work, and maybe they could give them an invoice. But you just remember those stories, because you don't want to get caught on that. Speaking from one who did get caught years ago, I was selling a unit, a house for a real good friend of mine, and she told me she had a new HVAC. She didn't. She had a new AC, and you know what? I wound up having to pay over $5,000 to buy the furnace because I had advertised it as a new unit, and because I had advertised it, it became my problem, and my broker in charge at that time required me to pay for it. So it can be pretty expensive when you make an error. So I'm speaking from experience here. Now the other thing you want to watch for is down here about the sewage, the sewer, and water. I have a separate form for you as a listing agent to fill out, but the seller fills this out to say if the seller knows that he has city county water, or if he knows he has community water, or if he knows he has a well. It's really important that he disclose what type he has. And every now and then they disclose incorrectly. You would think that anybody would know if they had a septic or if they knew they were on a well. But I promise you, there are people living in houses that do not actually know that. We had one fella who declared that his he had sewer and city county sewer and water, and if I'm not mistaken, it was the day of closing. He was out in the backyard met his new neighbor, and there was a pipe or something out of the yard. No, it was the green grass. The grass is greener around where the septic is, and he said to the neighbor something about, well, he said, my goodness, the grass is a lot greener over there. And the neighbor said, well, yeah, that's where your septic is. And he said, septic? I don't have a septic. I'm on sewer. The neighbor said, no, you're not. We talked to the seller, and the seller said, well, I just thought I got lost in the system was the reason they weren't sending me a bill for it. And it's like, oh, give me a break. You honestly thought that they lost you in the system. So anyway, the seller in that situation did have to ante up $4,500 to get a connection to the sewer line. But fortunately, they were close enough to the sewer line to do it. Otherwise, I don't know what we've done. We had one case that there was over $17,000 involved to settle. One of the cases was septic sewer. So that's when I did a separate little form for you all to fill out. Let me show you what it looks like. Because I believe I have it in this stack. Security. No, I have it in the listing forms. I'll show it to you in a minute. But nevertheless, I just I wanted to call your attention to it on the residential property disclosure, because you want to make sure the seller fills that out as accurately as they can. There's a lot of other stuff on here. One of the things to watch out for if you're listing a condominium, this one right here. Let's see about what does it say? Party walls. I think it's in here. One of them about shared walls, party walls right here. In a condominium or a duplex, or townhomes that are joined. You know, a lot of townhome complexes are 4 to a building, really. Those are party walls. So you're thinking, well, I don't have a party wall, but if they're adjoined, you do. So more than likely, you will see a yes, or should see a yes there instead of a no. The other thing to watch out for is private roads or road maintenance agreement. If the properties are not on the main highway, they will most likely need to show the lender that there is a private road maintenance agreement. That maintenance agreement is basically saying who's going to keep that road in good repair. And I don't know what part of town you're living in, but I live out here in Matthews, Mill Hill area, and we still have some rural type areas where there may be one road that's not paved, and there may be 4 or 5 family members that live on that road, you know, and the family members have never seen any reason to have an agreement as to who's going to do the repairs. They just get it done. Well, when you start selling to people that are not family members, you have to have something in writing that says, if there's a $2,000 repair needed on this road, then it's going to be shared proportionately among these 5 people. So an attorney generally has to write up a shared maintenance agreement, and in order for the buyer to get financing, with the lender's going to require it. And it's really good business sense for the buyer. So just kind of watch for that. Now, this section is where you're going to go into the information about the HOA, where you have to disclose there is an HOA. And if there is, you want to have the name of either the property manager or the name of the HOA president. And look here, there's 2 spaces. Sometimes you have more than one HOA. Most neighborhoods are going to have one, but there are particularly some of these mixed use larger developments like Burkdale on the north side of town, down at Regent Park, Baxter. There's several large developments that have some retail. They have the condo townhome complex development. They have single family homes. So when you have one of those scenarios, there's what's called a master HOA. That would be the HOA who takes care of the grounds primarily, or maybe it might be some amenities that they would take care of. But then, particularly if there's a condo association, it's going to be a second HOA. So you want to make sure if the seller is paying 2 HOA fees a year, a month, most of the time it's a month. Hey, George, come on in. But what you want to do is make sure that they know if they have to. We've run into, in fact, sometimes they don't even they don't quite understand, but they should have documentation from their HOA if they have 2, they're paying 2 bills. Okay, so you want to make sure that you call that to their attention and get the information as accurately as, particularly like the monthly or quarterly fee. There are times that there'll be a monthly fee. More often it'll be a quarterly fee. If it's a voluntary HOA, you want to make sure that you note that and that would generally be an annual one. George, if you'll give me your email address, I'll send you over these forms, okay?
Sounds good. Yep.
All right. What's your email?
Do you want me to send it over chat or?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. Yeah. It's just my first and last name.
Okay. At KW?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I got it here. All right.
Awesome. And I'll send it over the chat too.
Okay. Hold on just a minute and I'll get that form to you. We're going to go through this exercise again, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. I'll try not to lose you. I did it once, so I can do it again, don't you think? All right, let's see. I did. Well, there it is. I'm glad you could join us today.
Yeah.
There it is. You're already in my system. Look at you.
All right. Okay.
Okay, I'm sending it right now.
Sounds good.
Hopefully you'll be there in a second. We were talking a little bit earlier. This is the package. It's called pre-listing package. We put some documents in a folder for the seller. When you first start talking to the seller about listing the house, you need to get some forms and certain documents in their hands. And these are the ones that you would put in their hands. I don't know that did you get it? Did your email come through?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, good. All right. We're in the pre-listing, North Carolina pre-listing package. And we're talking about the residential property disclosure. It's about 3 or 4 forms down in that stack. The first 3 forms are forms that are required by the Real Estate Commission to be given out to the client for the seller, or hopefully it's going to be a client to the seller. And then this residential property disclosure is really a key part of your listing. There are so many things that can be misconstrued in what is conveyed on this form, and we were just talking about the importance of making sure that you help your seller to know how to answer some of these questions. And when you're talking about disclosing things, sometimes the seller says, well, I don't want to disclose that because that'll make the buyer not want to buy the house, such as water in the crawl space, or a roof leaks, but you might want to help them to understand that it's much more important that they answer it forthrightly, honestly, and because it'll keep them out of trouble when the buyer does find out there's a problem and mistrust him because he's trying to hide something. And you as an agent are responsible. If you know that there is water standing in that crawl space, you do have to tell. You have to tell the other agent, and you would do it in an email, because the seller may choose not to disclose it, which is his right, but you don't have the same right of not disclosing it if you know it. Okay. I think you might have got in a discussion on the homeowners. The homeowners association is really important information to pass on, particularly how much a monthly amount is going to be assessed to that buyer. Homeowners association fees can be pretty steep. And I'm working with one young woman right now who's trying to buy $100,000 condominium, and it's just like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condominium for that price, and she's going to have a $269 a month HOA fee. So you can imagine when she starts trying to qualify for that little condo, that $269, I mean, that's almost like a mortgage payment, So when she needs to know before she makes an offer on the property, how much she's going to be looking at as an HOA fee. And if there is a second HOA fee, which is a possibility in a master development, so make sure that you get that information if there is 2 HOAs. All right. Now let's scooch on down here. These are questions about the HOA, and the seller very well may not know. Now, sellers are historically negligent in reading information that comes from the HOA. They'll see the HOA name on the letter, or on the email, and it's like, I'll get that. They're taking care of this. I don't have to worry about this. And it may be about a lawsuit against the HOA, or maybe the HOA is like against a contractor, but they don't pay any attention to it. They're just letting the HOA take care of it. But when you go to closing, try to go to closing, it can affect the closing. So again, the seller may or may not know. If they don't know, they can put no representation, but hopefully they will contact their HOA and find out. All right. This is important because right now, on a condominium, particularly a condominium association, or maybe a retirement community, they need to know what services are paid for and what services they're going to be responsible to pay for. And again, you've got yes, no, and no representation. Hopefully it wouldn't be too many of those. I don't think there's anything unusual in here. You might not have exterior yard or landscape maintenance on most properties, unless it is a condominium or maybe one of the retirement communities. But water and sewer, that often is individual, even if it is a condominium, that often will be individual. Or it may be included and maybe they just pay the electric bills. So I really like to ask the seller for a monthly bill, a monthly statement. If they could possibly provide that to you, then you know what to look for, or you learn what to look for, so that you have a good grasp of what's being paid. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but like for the water bill, yeah, we call it a water bill, but it's really a water, sewer, stormwater bill. And if you look at that water bill and there's not anything on there about sewer, you know that there's got to be a septic somewhere because it's either one or the other. So you learn to look at the invoices, and so I would make a note to ask for some of those invoices. Okay, well, their monthly bills, the statements. Okay, I think it was before you got on the call, George. Troy and I were talking. This owners association disclosure, this information is already included in the form we just looked at. The form we looked at includes the residential property and the HO information. But if for whatever reason that property is exempt from the residential property disclosure, then you have this owners association that you can disclose the HOA. The residential property disclosure has 4 exemptions: a foreclosure, an estate, new construction, and property that's lived in by one of the owners that's selling or buying the unit. So primarily it's those first 3. All right, so this is just for the exempt properties. And now let's scoot on down here to the next form. Now look at the name of this. I've been in real estate almost 40 years, and I have never seen the word mandatory in a title on a form. Now, I've been instructed that it's mandatory, but I've never seen it in the title. And as I pointed out earlier, you see this seal? The seal means this is required by law. This is the state seal that says this is a statute. This is not a rule. Everyone has to, every seller, whether it's a FSBO or whether it's a landlord that's never lived in the property, it could be that trust fund in New York, they still have to provide this form. So this form, you see there's three sentences, I guess, that have to do with the mineral rights. The mineral rights were severed from the property, and most of the time people don't know. So it's that will be no representation, probably 99% of the time. The seller has severed the mineral rights. Well, there's no reason why the seller doesn't know if they did or didn't. Most of the time it's no, but the seller can't bluff you on that. There's no reason the seller doesn't know if he did or if he didn't. So get the answer here. And then here is the next one. It says the seller intends to sever the mineral rights. Well, he knows if he's got a contract, if he's got to do this before closing. So again, don't let him bluff you. Most of the time you're going to see no representation, no, and no. Do not accept no representation as relating to these two. Sometimes people think, well, I checked no representation up here. That doesn't matter. You still got to check these two. Same thing now with the oil and gas. You see, this is mineral and oil and gas rights. This is the mineral. This is the oil and gas rights. The same scenario. Were the oil and gas rights severed prior to your seller owning it? Most likely doesn't know, no representation. And again, they know, and you're probably going to see this and 2 no's, this and 2 no's. That's all the seller fills out. The seller signs it. The buyer is going to initial here that this was disclosed to him. So this is the seller side. This would be a buyer's initial. And as we mentioned a little earlier, you want to have the residential property disclosure and this mineral and oil and gas, we call it the MOG, M-O-G forms. You want to have those attached to your MLS sheet. So when you put it in MLS, you're going to attach it there, and that makes it available to the buyer's agents. Then they don't have to be tracking you down, and you have the seller, you get the seller to understand the seriousness of having it there for the buyer up front, because otherwise the buyer could possibly walk in 3 days if they don't have it. So that's the disclosures that you want to have them complete. They may or may not complete it before you take the listing, but at least have them ready to go into MLS by the time you get it ready to go in MLS. Now, if the house I should give you this question. Y'all just got through pre-licensing. If a lead-based paint disclosure is required, how old would the house be? When would the house have been built? You remember?
1978 or older.
Yeah,
or no,
good job.
Before 1978.
Before 1978.
Yeah.
You know what? I think you're probably smarter to do it 1978 or older. If you know the house is older than built before 1978, then they're going to need this. So again, have that there. It's better for them to throw it away than you not have it in your packet. And you explain it, you have it, and they know they've got to disclose it. Rarely does anybody have any information, quite honestly, but they do have to disclose it. This is a federal law. The seller, in this case, the seller is going to initial here and choose one of these two boxes or one of these two. Seller has no report, seller has no knowledge is what you see the most. All right. And again, the seller initials that this is their disclosure. The buyer, when the buyer is given this disclosure, the buyer then initials here, and the buyer acknowledges what those statements right there. Hold on a minute. Oh, what did I do? Now over here, this is a unique disclosure because you, as the agent, as the seller's agent, you have to initial too. This is the only form I think that we as listing agents have to sign in addition to the disclosure by the client. So you would initial here that you have explained the necessity of disclosure lead base. So and right down here, you have your buyer signature. You're getting your seller signature. Then you want to look. Now this form right here. No, wait a minute. Let me show you here. See, here's your listing agent. This is where you sign. You initial at the top, and you sign here. Okay. Now this is the book. I went ahead and gave you the full copy of it. You may or may not want to send the whole thing over, but if you're doing it, you know, in your DocuSign program or another forms program, it would be fine. EPA has published this little booklet, and that's the booklet that you're initialing up at the top of the page that you gave to your client. So this is the full brochure. Again, it's all in there for you. The other thing that I wanted to let you have a brochure on is a radon. Radon has become more of an issue than we thought it was even 5 years ago. Now radon is more prominent. We're seeing more and more radon tests being done by the home inspectors. So you might want to make sure that your seller understands that if a buyer does have a radon inspection done, he might not even know that he has radon. For many, many years, we never did radon tests, but it has, like I said, it has become one of the more prominent inspections that's done. And well, it should be, because we have found much more evidence in lots of different areas. For a while, the only properties that we were really concerned about would be basement properties that might have radon. But that's not necessarily the case right now. There's I can't remember the name of the condominium complex at South Park. I think it's Phillips Place, but that's not Phillips Place.
I know the View in Uptown. I know the View in Uptown had some problems with radon.
Did they? Yeah.
Yeah, like the 25th floor had like really high levels.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, this big complex there at South Park had it too, and it was like, well, you wouldn't expect that, but you don't know what's trapping those gases in there, and all the better that they get inspections done front. Yeah. So this gives you a brochure. Like I say, you can send it this way, or if you want to print it out and put it in, it looks nicer when you do. Yeah. And again, the seller may or may not look at it. you know. Now, another thing that you're going to want to get some information on is the security system. You know, just about everybody has a security system these days. Security systems are built in a lot of buildings now. So it's not the system that's the problem. The system is a fixture. The problem is the service contract. The seller would have a third party service contract, and that contract has to be satisfied before it's closed or at closing or by closing. So you don't handle this, but this is in there to remind you. It's a little worksheet. It's to remind you that to ask, do you have service on your security system? And don't forget to ask about accessories. Do you have accessories? Because see, accessories can be removed. They're not fixtures. The system that's built in stays, but the accessories can be removed just as the service can be removed. But the service provider is going to require that seller to pay off his contract unless he transfers the contract to a new property, or unless the buyer will assume his contract and there's a fee to do that. So this, again, is just a reminder to check into that, so that when the buyer needs to know, if there's information, needs to know about the security system, then you have it already up front. And that's why it's in the pre-listing, just to remind the sellers to tell you about it. Utilities. This is a simple little sheet. These are in-house forms, obviously. This is a simple little sheet that you could list the electric company, the propane company, the water company. You know, these are, it's a convenience for the buyer, obviously, but it's also helps you to know another resource of what's happening at that house. Hopefully, if you didn't think to ask about the oil tank, they could tell you where they get the propane. You know, where have they leased the tank from? You know, or if it's an oil furnace, where do they get oil from? Then that confirms to you, hey, they got an oil furnace. They don't have a heat pump like they told me they did. You know, so it again is just confirming things for you. And look at this right here. Trash service. Do you know there are a lot of neighborhoods that the trash service is not included in their county taxes? They have to pay an additional $35 to $65 a month to a trash service to pick up their trash. A lot of people who are lived in the city for years, you know, we just don't even think about having to pay for a trash pickup. But the buyer needs to know that. And again, you need to know as much about that property as you can find out. So you want to have this little sheet. There is a utility sheet in the MLS that is extremely detailed. Boy, I mean, they really get a lot of information on it. So it's a good one, but most of you are not going to want to get that much information, but just know there is another form, but this has been adequate for us. The property taxes. You'll find in MLS, there's a section that says a tax location, and that has caused so much concern through the years, and so many violation notices sent out from MLS, because you think, well, if it's in Mecklenburg County, that's the tax location. The county is the default, but if there is a city tax also paid, that becomes the tax location. For instance, Charlotte is in Mecklenburg County. We all understand that. Mecklenburg County taxes are paid and Charlotte taxes are paid. So Charlotte is the location that you would put in MLS. And I think it was just last week, they put in this great new field. It asks what city are the taxes paid for, or something of that nature. So it reminds you to look for the city. Don't look for the county. The county is going to go with the city, all right? And then there's also an option that there is no city taxes. It may be just the county, but don't count on it. I don't think there's 200 square yards in this county that doesn't have some city taxes to it. So that's why that's on there. it's not as relevant now that the MLS has made that clarification. Now, that's what a pre-listed package, as far as the forms would go, you would want to have some marketing information in there, a little bit about yourself, just something to relate to the people, a little bit about KW. And as you're working with your coaches, or if you're in some of the classes, in Ignite classes, they're going to help you with designing or getting some of those prepared to go in your listing or pre-listing packages. The only other thing that you might put in there would possibly be some, well, you'll have it on here though, some numbers of calling for the utilities. But if you have this sheet for them you could even attach it to the MLS sheet too, or when you put it in MLS if you want to. But that's what we call a pre-listed package. Now, do you have any questions? While I'm trying to find the other folder. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them for you.
Did you go over the septic and sewer discovery form?
We're going to go over it. I'm so glad you asked about my form.
Yeah.
That's a doozy, isn't it?
Okay.
Let's see. It is, and I'll just go right to it right now because I'm going to the listing package right now. There it is. All right. We have had so much problems. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, North Carolina and South Carolina hotline, the legal hotlines, say that the septic and sewer is the #1 issue in both states of having to deal with. And you wouldn't think it'd be so difficult. You just would not believe that sellers don't know or don't want to tell what services they have. So this little form has been updated about 3 times because of different issues that we've run into. And we've run into issues so many times, we felt we better do something. So that's what this form is about. When you have a seller who has disclosed to you that they have a city county sewer, you as an agent, I started to say specifically listing, but you as a buyer's agent are responsible too. But you start it as the listing agent. First thing you want to do is ask for their utility bill. If they have one, and I just said, they'll say, I've got my water bill. And you say, well, let me have look, see, let me see it. I would love to have you attach a copy if you can get your hands on it, okay? But the important thing is to look at that bill and make sure it has a water charge, it has a sewer charge, and storm water, okay? If it just has water, you know that they're not getting city county sewer treatment, all right? So if they do not have a utility bill, you want to pick up the phone, call the utility department in that county and ask these questions. Ask if the water connection is or is not available, or is and is not connected. So help me, it wasn't even 2 weeks ago. We had the issue that they said it wasn't connected, but they didn't have anything about it not being available. It's not even available. So the only option to that buyer is to be happy with the septic. And if that buyer doesn't want a septic and they can't have available on the water or the sewer, then you got a problem. And we've had that too. This is so funny. We had one person who would not take city water. She wanted a well. And on the listing, it was listed that there was a well. But when they got there, they had city county water. And she and she had a royal fit. I've forgotten how much money we had to pay her to calm her down. Not that, I mean, she's 1 in 100 or more that would want well versus city county, but she did. Well, turn it around. Most of the time you see it the other way around. Again, in fact, I think her situation is what made me put the water connection in here. Water connection is or is not available. Can they connect if they want to connect? Or is it already connected? Same thing with the sewer. And I want you to put the date you call, the name of the person, it'll be the first name, at whatever utility company, if it's Mecklenburg County or Union County or whatever. Now, this next little section, okay, you can tell I've got a story about all this, right? I can tell you stories that'll make your hair stand up. That's why mine stands up. About some of these things. Community wells or community sewer are not typical. And you may or may not know exactly how to find out if the seller doesn't know. The seller should know if they're paying an additional fund of check every month or quarter for a service for water or sewer. They've got to know that. When we moved to town back in the early 90s, we lived in a community, in fact, I still live there, that had a community sewer, community septic. And our bill was, I think, $65 even back then, or $67. Again, that eats into your monthly budget. So you need to know that you're going to have that extra bill. The community well or the community septic is probably more desirable because you don't have the maintenance, the individual maintenance on it. But there's a little community on 521 called Danby, D-A-N-B-Y. Those homes were built back around the late 80s and 90s. They have a community service there. There are some neighborhoods that do, but I found out after I think it was 2 months that we tried to find out about the well service in a house in Kannapolis. And do you know, I can't tell you how many county people I talked to. I'm calling for one of my agents trying to discern what was going on. Finally, after numerous calls, I can't tell you the different ones I called even. Finally, one man said, well, ma'am, the whole county's, that whole area is on a community well. It's not serviced by the county at all. I said, you've got to be kidding me. Does anybody in the county know that they are on county water? Because I've talked to probably 24 and they don't know. And he confirmed it. He showed me where it was. So that all that to say, you will have it. You won't have a lot of it, but if it's not on a septic and it's not connected to a city county sewer, the other option would be a community. And you usually know by the amount of money that the seller pays in addition to their water. But what made it so strange about this scenario I just talked to you about, the only bill they had was for the community well. So that it was, even that didn't help us. Now, this area down here, this is what started all this, the problems on the septic, where people would say they're on septic, they were on sewer, or vice versa. Not too many people do ask to be on a septic if they already have access to the sewer. The big thing as far as the commission goes is you've got to get a permit, a copy of the permit that would show the number of bedrooms that septic system is designed for. If the builder built the house as a 5-bedroom house, but the septic system permit only allows 3 bedrooms, then you got a problem. The problem was exposed a few years ago when a realtor up in the Lake Norman area had bought a 5-bedroom house, just what I just described. And when he started trying to sell it, the buyer discovered that the permit was for 3 bedrooms. That realtor was determined he was going to sell that house as a 5-bedroom house, and he can't do that. It went all the way to whatever the top court is, Superior in North Carolina. It went all the way through the court systems, and it was determined at the end that he did not have the right to advertise as a 3-bedroom, or to disclose to the buyers that he had a 5-bedroom house because it was designed, the septic only designed for 3 bedrooms. We went through a period of time where there were some builders in town that were building these really, really big houses, you know, and it was nothing to have a 5 or 6 or 7-bedroom house. We call them, they were big box type houses. I forgot even the name of the builder now, but he came in here from, I think, Cincinnati, and was building these big houses. Well, everybody was excited to have all these bedrooms, and come to find out years later, they were all 3-bedroom. We find sometimes we've found a septic permit for a 1-bedroom, or maybe for a 2-bedroom. And so therein is the problem. So you need, if the seller tells you that they've got a septic, the first thing you want to do is to contact the environmental health department of that county. All right, not the register of deeds, not the water department. You call the environmental health department, and if you check with them about the permit. Some of the environmental health departments will ask you to fax or email in a request. Others will honor your request, you know, if you just call. Union County wants you to pay them $10 to get the permit. So happy if we didn't have the other day, one of my buyer's agents said, the listing agent said they weren't going to spend $10 to get that permit. And I said, well, honey, if I was you, I'd be spending $10. We can't make somebody else spend it, but you're responsible for your buyer. So spend the $10 and charge it back to the buyer of the closing clause disclosure. I don't care about that, but you've got to get that permit. So that's what these blanks are about right here. You want to get the septic permit if you can. And by the way, most of the counties do not have the septic permits on file that are older than 6 years. But don't take that as a rule. It's a rule of thumb. Do not take that as the fact that, well, I can't get it, it's older than 6 years. You still got to call, okay? If you call, when you get the permit, if I were you, I would attach it as well in MLS. And if it shows 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, that's the total number of bedrooms you can put in MLS. It doesn't matter if the bedroom has a closet, because you probably saw that article not too long ago from the North Carolina Realtors Association about when is a bedroom a bedroom. Well, most of the time we say when it has a closet, but I won't go into that right now, other than to say you need to put the number of bedrooms in the listing that the permit allows, and you can put a description down the agency remarks. You can say the home has the 2 we call them swing rooms or multi-purpose rooms. It could be a library, it could be a bedroom, or could be used but it's not, you can't advertise it as such. Down here, this is what to remind you, the Environmental Health Services Department, and put the name of the county. This where you as an agent that are doing this work, you affirm that you have gotten the septic permit, and right here you affirm that it's not available if it's not available. And this is just your word that you have called on such and such a date and it's not available. Then you as a listing agent can sign right here. That's all you have to do. You do not have to give it to a buyer's agent. It's not a form that you have to get somebody else to sign. This is just your work, where it's your CYA work, that in case we get in a problem, we've got this. If you are the buyer's agent, then I want you to sign it and then have the buyer sign it. You see, the seller has already given a disclosure. And so therefore, you don't need the seller to sign this. The seller has given the disclosure in his residential property disclosure. The buyer is only acknowledging that you've taken that extra step and you've disclosed to the buyer what you found out, which is beyond the residential property disclosure. So that's why you see two signatures on the buyer side, one on the listing side. Did I answer your question, George? Okay,
Yeah, I did.
you're ready to do the form. All righty.
Yeah.
Let's scooch back up here now and look at the listing agreement. We'll highlight a few things. I don't know, you are quite young, and I don't know if when you were in junior high school or whatever grade, did you learn to diagram sentences? I love diagramming. And I kind of have a habit of, I see a picture. I guess I'm much more visual than I ever thought I was. I like a picture of what's going on. And this is a picture of what goes on in the listing. One of our agents did it a few years ago, and it kind of gives you a picture as a listing agent, the pieces that are a part of this puzzle called a listing. So I'm not going to go through this. You can certainly study it on your own, so I'm not going to go through it. A moment ago, I mentioned to you there's some exemptions that the state allows for the residential property disclosure. This is the information about that so that you have it in writing. Now, I kind of outlined some things that you as a listing agent, some steps that you're going to be taking, and just kind of have that as a background as you're going through a listing. Hopefully this will give you some guidance or what to expect, next steps. And again, this is for resources for you, okay? Now, this is our in-house listing file checklist. If you have been in DocuSign, some of the forms programs, you probably saw the checklist that is in there. It's basically taken from our colorful in-house forms. But what I have done on these forms, if you'll notice, this is a listing file checklist. This is kind of the order in which you do things. You might interchange 2 or 3 of them, but this is kind of the order that you would do them, and getting over here to the closing, even hopefully the closing, and then, or if you have to terminate. Oh, I hate terminations. Oh, I hate them. But they're a fact of life. So I put that in here. The forms that you're going to use at these different stages, you'll notice there is a form number and a date. I mentioned a little earlier, the date right now that we're using is 7/2021. North Carolina changes forms every July. Even if it's tweaked just a little bit, it'll be copyrighted in 2022. So and I'll change all the forms for you. But right now, when you pick up this list, you're going to know what form number, you're going to know what date to be looking for on the form. Make sure you're using the right one. The exclusive right to sell. And we're going to be talking about these 2 forms. These are MLS forms, the firm exclusive, and they're coming soon. Again, I'm going to go through that with you as we go through the listing agreement. And this is once you do put it in MLS, we want a copy of you putting it in MLS. And I really recommend that you send a copy of your MLS agreement to the seller and let the seller review it and see if the seller, maybe you marked that it had 2 parking spaces and it only has 1, whatever. You just want them to okay it. And I would just get them to initial it, that you send it to them. It just helps them to feel a part of what's going on. And also CYA, that you did show what you put in MLS to the seller. And if there's a discrepancy, you share the responsibility of it, okay? Now, look at this little yellow thing here. It is law, again, law, not rule, that you are to give a copy of things that are signed to the person who signed it within 3 days. So if you're working with real estate agents and you have your listing agreement and maybe one of these other agreements, within 3 days of their signing, you're supposed to make sure they have a copy or have access to a copy through DocuSign. But you're supposed to submit it for review to the office. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to review it immediately, but we are supposed to be able to access it. And in Command, the only way we can have access to the forms that you're doing is for you to submit for review. Otherwise, we have no access to go in and out of your rooms. We don't know what you're doing, you know? So just remember, within 3 days after you've got the signature of that seller on those 3 primary documents, to make sure to submit for review so that we can access it. Again, not too long ago, I had a complaint against one of my newer agents at the Real Estate Commission. I go into Command and I can't find a thing. And I call her and she said, yes, I've got it in there. And I said, well, honey, I can't find it anywhere. Come to find out, it was a transaction she had done like 4 or 5 months ago, and it terminated, and she had archived it. So she couldn't find it and I couldn't find it, but she finally did, thank goodness, because I couldn't say to the commission, I don't have it. She would have been in deep and serious trouble because she hadn't turned it into the firm. So, all right. So enough said. Make sure that you submit and that we have access. Don't expect us to respond to you immediately because we got a lot of files, but we have access. Now, the second step on this would be you're going to submit it for review in Command once you get all of these things. Here's your residential property disclosure, some notes about it, your mineral oil and gas, again, going right down your system here as to when and where you would submit these things. That's all I'm going to do on this one. Oh, by the way, I do have a listing sale file checklist because you're going to have a listing, and right now you're probably going to have a sale right behind it. So there is a listing sale checklist as well. These checklists are on the kwbresources.com. kwbresources.com. Under the banner, I believe it's for office resources, and there's a heading, those forms and checklists. So you can find them right there. This working with real estate agents disclosure, you learned in pre-licensing, I know, that you've got to present this to everybody on first substantial contact. Not when you say hello, but when they say, I'm interested in this house and I want to know the price or whatever, say, I got to talk to you about something first. Put your little hand up and just stop them. Say, I need to tell you how realtors in North Carolina work with clients or work with people. All right. So then you want to have this form available to explain that we work in all of these categories with a seller. This is a form that is saying to the person, the client, the customer, whoever they are at the time, what our services our firm offers. This is not what they agree to. This is what we offer. All right. If you'll notice right here, it says check all relationships. So you're going to check seller's agency because we work as a single agency just with the seller. We do that type because that's the way most of our sales are. You know, as a single agency, you're representing the seller. Somebody else is going to bring the buyer. That's a single agency. We also do dual agency. Dual agency would be when the firm is the agent, which is what our agency agreements say. Then you as an individual, if you as an individual are going to represent both parties, the buyer and the seller, then we do allow that. We also allow that in this scenario. It's called designated agency. Designated agency would be when the firm is allowed to be a dual agent. And let's say one of you is the listing agent and the other is the buyer's agent. I, as the BIC, would designate you automatically as the buyer's agent if you have a buyer's agency agreement, and the other of you the listing agent because you have the listing agreement. That's designated. We can, in some scenarios, we might have to find another person to be designated to represent one or the other if you know too much about that other client, but most of the time it works very well because we've got so many agents, you can't possibly know very much about the listings as a buyer's agent in a firm as large as ours. So the designated agency, that is the way you can be designated just to work with a seller, and we get another agent in the firm to be a buyer's agent. So yes, we do all three of those. And you want to point this out right here. Make sure that if the person you're talking to is not going to list with you, that they understand that when a buyer agent brings an offer to them, they should keep things confidential to themselves, because the buyer's agent would have to tell her client anything that they disclose. So you're wanting to just kind of reinforce the importance that they use you as a listing agent, first of all. But this is something that they need to be aware of as a FSBO owner. Here is the brochure. That is it took me so long to start saying for working with the real estate agents brochure. I couldn't stop saying it because I'd said it for 30 some years. This last year, they came out with that 1-page document. 1 page is for seller and the back side is for buyers. But here is the brochure. The brochure now is a questions and answers. And I think if I were you, I would make sure that I included the brochure in my packet that I mail out. I'm not that too many people are going to read it, but at least you're offering it, okay? Whereas, this is a very simple explanation and people love it because it's simple. But there are a few people who are detail oriented and they do like to have the full brochure. If you're going to put together a packet in a folder and give, it's really nice to have the colorful brochures, and you can get these brochures from the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. They're 25 cents each. They don't even charge you taxes or shipping. Okay, so you can order them at ncrec.gov. You can order them there, or you can go up to Canopy store, the store at the board, and buy them again for 25 cents. They just, it just makes your folder look nice when you have these different colorful brochures. That Working with Real Estate Agents is one of them. The other one is that questions and answers on home inspections. It's a nice little brochure. There's several brochures that, again, just making your folder look desirable to read. Okay. Now, here we are to the juicy one, the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. This is the agreement that makes sure that the seller is going to work exclusively with you and no other agent. So help me, if I didn't have just yesterday a call from one of my agents, and a divorce attorney had suggested to the parties that were divorcing, in order to sell their house, both of them needed a listing agent. And I'm going, what? An attorney said that? I think I'm going to call the attorney and say, I think you missed that day in class. You can't have two exclusive listing agents. You have an exclusive agent. Okay. So anyway, that I don't remember having that come up before, especially the advice of an attorney.
That's insane.
Is that not insane?
Yeah.
But notice right up here from the very beginning here, it says it's a listing agreement between the seller, and look here, and the firm. Remember I said a while ago, the dual agency would be with the firm. This is where you're going to put Keller Williams Ballantyne area. And you do not put your name there. You do not put your team name there. This is only the firm that's the member of the MLS, which is Keller Williams Ballantyne area. Okay. Now, and that explains it right here. Now, this little box, anytime you see something in a blue box, that is a note. That is something for you to consider, to be aware of. But if you see it in red, that's a warning. So you stop and take note when you see it in red. Now this section right here has a lot to do with whose name is going to go right here as the seller. let's say someone has just recently died and you don't know whose name to put there. Is the home still owned by the person who died? Is it owned by an estate? Is it owned by the heirs? That's what you're going to have to find out. Not every, in fact, fewer than most, they may not be using an attorney, or they may have an attorney like that divorce attorney. You need to find out who owns the house. All right. And the deceased owner is not going to be the owner of the house. You're going to see that deceased person's name in the tax records. But when that person deceases at midnight that day, they are no longer the owner. The heirs are going to be owners if there is a will. If there's not a will, then there's going to be an administrator that's going to be assigned to sell the house. So if you get in that scenario, just call me and we can talk about the different options that you might have. Just be aware that it being an estate can cause you some complications right up front, okay? The next thing is this one right here. If the owner of the property is a corporation or an LLC, you know, the limited liability company, or it could be a trust. There's a lot of people now putting them in living trusts, so they don't have to go through probate, really. The legal entity you see the most is an LLC. And when there is an LLC that is selling or buying, that's an entity. And when the documents are signed on the last page of this document, you're going to see a place for entity buyer or entity seller, and the word buy, which must be the signature of the person who has the right to sign to sell that property. And then there'll be, the name will be printed and a date. In an LLC, there must be a manager in order to sell it on behalf of the LLC. You can find out about LLCs by going to the Secretary of State website in North Carolina or South Carolina, but we're talking about North Carolina forms today. If you go to NCSOS, you can look up the LLCs and you can see the paperwork and verify who is the manager who would be signing for it. All right. You want to make sure that whoever is signing has some written documentation. You can go on that website for that and for a corporation, but you wouldn't be able to for a trust. So you always want to have them, the seller, give you something in writing that shows that they don't have to show you the whole will. They don't have to show you everything, but they should show you that page that says that they have the right to sell. If there's a will and there's an executor or executrix named, they have the right to sell on behalf of that deceased person. May or may not have to have the signatures of the heirs, but at least know who, have something in writing that says who can sign these forms, and they should have something. A non-owner spouse should be named as the seller because he or she will be required in most cases to sign the deed to release certain marital rights to the property. In North Carolina, the default, I think it's called tenancy by the entireties. It's a marital right when one party owns a property, then when they're married, the other party spouse also owns 100%. It's 100%, 100%. You normally think of people owning something jointly as like 50-50 or 70-30, but in North Carolina, the default ownership is 100-100 with marital spouses. All right. So this is complicated. If a person gets a divorce and they haven't settled the house, when that person marries somebody else, when you sell the property, let's say the new wife, the same husband, and the ex-wife, all three have to sign. because they still have rights unless the first divorce attorney did his full job and closed out with something. They use a quitclaim deed and they use a free trader agreement, was saying that one of the spouses has the right to sell on their own. So so you can see you're getting all kinds of fun things, and the closing attorney can guide you there too, but I just wanted to make you aware of some of those things when you're listing your property. You come down here and see it in bold that that you've gone over the work of the real estate agents with them. The term of the agreement. You'll see the term effective date used a lot. Effective date is the date that all parties have signed and communicated. The effective date typically is when you begin the term of selling this property. And I'm not going to go into this because I don't want you to ever check that. The effective date, and then you got to end. You got to start and you got to end. Okay, this is your beginning date, and this is your end date. And we're going to talk about some modification to that in a minute. But effectively, if you're going to list it on June 1, no, today's June 2. You can't do June 1, June 2, then you probably are going to go out, let's say 6 months. You know, some agents like to have all their listings expire, let's say on the 30th of the month, the end of the month, so they know they don't have to remember each of them individually. They just know at the end of the month, they better be getting renewals if they need them. And you can do that. It doesn't have to be an equal number of 6 months. It could be, we listed on the 2nd, and it could be November the 30th, all right? Or it could be November the 2nd, whichever you choose to do. Now, the property information, the way you're going to find the property information most of the time would be going to the tax records. Obviously, the seller is going to give you an address, but you're going to verify it by going to the tax records. You're going to pull those tax records out, and you're going to see if there's any discrepancies in what the seller understands or knows. Every now and then, you're going to find an address that's going to be different from what the seller tells you. And generally, when there is a difference, it's because of this right here. The post office has assigned an address that was different than what the legal description says the address is. All right. So if it is, most of the time you're going to put the address that is the mail delivery address, because that's the address people know street, place, know the neighborhood by. It might be a corner house, and the mailbox is on the side of one corner, and the house faces another street. It's that simple. But if you have that scenario, write it out in the agency description, the agent remarks, so that you can help, so that other people don't say, why are you trying to sell this house? Because you got the wrong address. The important thing, attorney told me just last week, is that it doesn't matter what address is in the tax record. What matters is the parcel ID, that identification number that is assigned to that parcel. That's what the closing attorneys are looking for. And that's, well, that kind of makes sense. So you want to verify, like I said, with the tax records, but notice if there's a discrepancy. Now, again, here's your legal description here. Your legal description, you will find the legal description in the tax records. You don't find a lot of discrepancy there, every now and then, but most of the time you can rely on that. I really like for you all to pull the deed for the properties, and they're pretty easy to obtain, now with so much online. I know with Mecklenburg and Union County, they're quite easy to access. If you can pull that deed, and maybe the seller has a copy, but if you could pull that, then that way you can verify with the tax records. But most of the time, the tax records are right in the legal description. You'll see right here, this where it says PIN, PID, that's that parcel ID. That's that, it's probably 8 or 9 digits, and you're going to put that in there. When you enter this information in MLS, there will be a hyperlink under that number so that when a buyer's agent looks at that property, they can immediately go to that hyperlink and go right into the tax records of that specific property. Love that feature. So you want to make sure that you have the right property ID so that it accesses the right property. We don't have plat references in our area. We have deed book and page. We do not have plat book or page. So you're probably not going to put anything in there, maybe just a dash to say that you don't want to have a blank there, but you do want to get the deed book and page. It would be here. Again, you're going to find that on your tax records. And if you want to pull the deed and verify with that. I do want, see this line right here where it says other description right in there. I want you to pull the full legal description in here. It may be L14, M something, B something. It may be short. You remember the term meets and bounds in your pre-licensing class? That typically, that may be even a half a page of description. So if it is, you want to put meets and bounds, see attached, and you want to print that lengthy description out and attach it to your listing. And it's okay if it's on a plain piece of paper because we don't have any other form for you to be on, okay? You're not going to have that very often, but just so you know, most of the time it's going to be that lot number and block and section. Then up here, subdivision and condominium, make sure if it's a condominium that the legal description right here has the word unit in it. When you look at a legal description, the way you know it's a unit, I mean, the way you know it's a condo and not a townhome, it has the word unit. It's not the style of the building, it's whether or not it's deeded as a condominium. And look for the word unit. And then you're going to need to know, put the name of the condominium unit or the subdivision, obviously. Let's come down here, fixtures. Oh my goodness, we could camp out here for about an hour on fixtures. Don't let the seller skip over these things. It's really important that the seller understands these things stay with the house. These are attached to the house. Therefore, they stay with the house. I don't care if he did buy them. I don't care if grandmama did give that chandelier for a wedding present. It stays with the house unless you exempt it. And you want to go to the next page. If there's something that they just won't sell with the house, you're going to come down to the next page. See right here, other items that do not convey. You would write it right here. If it's something that's not owned, let's say a propane tank. Rarely do people own propane tanks. So you would list that here. And it could be the security system or those accessories. Those are leased, they're not owned. So you want to make sure you note that right here. Then up here, oh, this is something that was new this last year, the unpairing or deleting data from a device. Alexa has got to be either taken or Alexa has got to be back to manufacturing settings, because even garage doors openers, because you can use these wonderful apps now to open the door when you're 5 miles away. Those have to be, the information has to be deleted, and all that stuff has to be separated out. So make sure the seller understands that that will be expected to be done. One thing I want to point out to you on, wait a minute, I went too far. Right here, storage building. When you're walking around that house and you see a storage building in the backyard or wherever, you want to say, were you planning to take your storage? Just be innocent asking. And they say, well, of course. He's, well, okay, we need to go exempt that on the listing agreement. Because see, it's considered a fixture. So if there is a storage or utility building, you want to make sure that you bring it to their attention, because they don't think that they can't take their storage building. So that's where you take the leadership and talk to them about it.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Yeah, so when you're exempting an item, do you have to, let's say they want to take one chandelier, but the rest stay with the house? Would you just specify like chandelier in kitchen or
Definitely.
chandelier in bathroom or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there are some people who that have chandeliers in their bathrooms. Not somebody in the kitchen, but that became a trend, a couple of years ago, to have this nice little chandelier in their with their garden tubs or whatever. Yeah. You just specify the room.
Okay.
And make sure. And when you enter it in MLS, there is a section for exclusions. So in that section, when you're entering it into the MLS, you exclude the chandelier in the bathroom, whatever.
Okay.
Sounds good. That's it. Down here, personal property. A refrigerator is considered a personal property. Washer and dryer is considered personal property because they can be moved. Other appliances are considered built-in, even a stove that can be moved. And it's in that list of fixtures, by the way. So if your seller does not want to take their refrigerator, then you don't do anything. But if the seller wants to have the right to take the refrigerator with him, then you need to notice somewhere. All right. This one says the following personal property present on the property on the date of the offer shall be transferred to the buyer at no cost. So if the buyer sees the refrigerator sitting there, that refrigerator is going to be expected to still be there. But if not, you can exclude it. All right. So you might want to make sure that you're aware of that personal property. The home warranty, we're not seeing too much of home warranties right now because of the market, but just know that if you do order a home warranty for a seller or a buyer, we do not collect a fee from the home warranty company and pass it to you because we didn't collect it. There's been a lot of lawsuits with RESPA on these fees. And so our owners decided a long time ago that we just wouldn't even put ourselves into that harm's way. So that where it says a fee of, that's always going to be zero. Okay. The listing price, you're going to find out the listing price by doing a CMA. And obviously, please don't miss a CMA class. We can't go into details on it today, but learning to price properties is an art. It's like appraisals. Appraisers consider their profession an art. It's not a science. So a lot of it is just knowing the market, knowing what adjustments to make and the value of an adjustment. So attend any of the CMA classes that you can, because that will greatly help you. It's not as critical right now because sellers are getting just about what sellers want for a house, but this market won't be with us forever. So make sure that you learn to do CMAs. Know what type of financing that can be offered on that house. If you have a house that would qualify you for USDA, USDA has to be in a certain area. It's a location prerequisite. So you would need to find out talk to a lender or look it up online and find out if that location would be considered for USDA financing, which is 100% financing. You want know what FHA and VA. You want to make sure the seller understands that if a buyer wants to have an FHA or VA loan, that the seller understands what those loans are and how it affects them. Again, you're going to learn that from the lenders that you'll be associated with. And if you don't know, just pick up the phone. Liz and Simon or Adam with Movement are wonderful to respond to you, to give you an answer. And they don't ever feel like any question is an unimportant question. Okay. The FHA and VA make sure that the seller understands that the house has to appraise for whatever the contract price is, or the buyer can't get his earnest money back. That's the benefit to the buyer on the FHA VA. The firm's commission, you're going to, most of the time, you'll see 6% here. We are seeing some variations now, but sometimes we have some people who can charge 7 or 8%, particularly if they have a large team working with a client. And we've seen it at 5%. But when you cut it below 6%, give me a call, or Tasha Viney, and we'll talk about it with you, because that's kind of what the firm expects. It's always negotiable, but just so you know what we would be expecting. This little section right down here, this is the protection period. If a seller entertains a buyer's offer to come back after the listing expires, the buyer says, after it expires, I'll be back and we'll work this out and cut the realtor out, then you've got a period of time right here that they wouldn't be allowed to do that. They shouldn't do it anyway. I generally just put 90 days. Some people put 180 or 365, but I figured 90 days would cool their jets a little bit. So it's up to you how many days you put there. Now, remember a while ago I said the firm expects 6%. Then right here is what you're going to share of that 6%. So if 6% is back on page 3, then right here is where we share with a buyer's agent. And we only do that middle box right there. We do not cooperate with sub-agents from other firms. We cooperate with buyer agents from other firms. We are the sub-agent, or you are the sub-agent as the agent, and we don't want other agents in the field representing our sellers. So we don't do this, and we don't do this, which is not applicable in our situation. But right here is we do cooperate with buyers agents, and we would, I hesitate to use the word, in the past we've seen 6%, out of which we'll pay 3% to a buyer's agent. We are seeing that they're seldom right now. We're seeing more often, even if you get 6% total, you would give 2.5% to the buyer's agent. Unfortunately, there's even less amount offered by some, but you're going to hear a lot about that discussion because there's a really big issue with the National Association of Realtors in the last year or so. But as a kind of what we would expect, it would be 6%, out of which you will share 3% to the buyer's agent. Do not put 3% on the other page, because you said, well, I was going to get 3% and I was going to give 3% away. Well, you got to collect 6 if you're going to give 3 away. If you collect 3 for the firm, the buyer's agent is going to get that 3%. Okay, so make sure that you understand it's a total and then some is split out of it. The other thing I want to call to your attention, oh my goodness, I'm out of time. This is really important right here. Not that all of this is not important, otherwise I wouldn't spend the time going over it with you. Marketing. Oh, before I do that, there's a warning. See that red box? There's been a trend in the last year or so, or maybe longer than that, for something called love letters. We refer to as love letters. The National Association of Realtors refers to them as liability letters, because often as a buyer wants to relate to the seller and get preferential treatment, in other words, they want to win the bid on the house, they will try to relate in some personable way, and they're nice letters. But you and I can't be responsible for determining if they're violating the fair housing laws, and therefore we are not going to entertain passing a love letter from a buyer's agent to our seller. If the buyer's agent wants to mail it, they want to find another way. And if you're a buyer's agent with us, you don't handle it either, because so many times the way we relate is trying to relate that would violate one of the protected categories in the fair housing laws. So you want to explain that to the seller, and the seller has to initial this and acknowledge that you did. All right. So it's not this that you told them. They've got to acknowledge that you told them. So so that we're not going to be giving them any love letters. All right. Now this part about marketing. This is probably the most confusing thing about the listing agreement. A commencement of marketing. Back in May of 2020, the National Association of Realtors put into effect a policy called the Clear Cooperation Policy. That Clear Cooperation Policy basically is saying, since we as members of MLSs guarantee that we are going to cooperate and share our listings immediately, we're not going to hold them out to let somebody in our own firm sell it. We're going to make it available, information available to other members of the MLS. They put in this policy that within 1 business day, if you have a signed listing agreement, remember that effective date I talked about, you have a signed listing agreement within 1 business day, you must put it in MLS. Well, I got to tell you, that's next to impossible. It is so difficult. First of all, you got to do a lot of background checks, things we've been talking about already, to find out, even to make sure your information is correct. Then you want to get pictures. You want to get professional pictures. You've got to get it professionally measured. There's things that just make it difficult. So they have allowed you to have some extra time, but you cannot publicly market the property as you're trying to get it ready to go on the market. All right. So let's say today is June the 2nd, and that's going to be our effective date. That listing would have to be in the MLS by the end of tomorrow, June the 3rd, next business day, unless you put an extended date right here. That's called the marketing date. If you put, let's say the seller and you agree that within, let's say 8 days, you're going to put it in MLS, then that's going to become the date that you can market the property. If for whatever reason you want to make it coming soon within that 10 days, and the seller says, okay, you can come down to this section right here and have him check, or seller check, that you're allowing coming soon. This date right here is going to match this date, because that's when you're going to publicly market it. Coming soon is not considered public marketing because it's only being marketed to other members of the MLS. So they don't consider it public marketing, but it is a type of marketing. And so you explain to the seller that you can put the information in MLS, and while you're getting it measured or getting pictures done, or you're doing some of this background stuff, other agents can know that it's coming on the market, and that marketing date's when it's going to be available for them to make appointments to show. The most critical thing about coming soon is it cannot be shown. The seller can't let somebody in, the babysitter can't let somebody in, the painter can't let somebody in, and you certainly can't let anybody in. That's the critical thing on coming soon. That allows you some time to be able to put the information in there, get people primed and ready to see it, and then it goes active on that marketing date. Now, there is a form with MLS. Can y'all give me just a few more minutes? It looks like this. It's the next form after this one. There it is. Coming soon, no show. See the form coming soon, no show. It costs, if you let somebody in that property, or if anybody lets somebody in that property, it's $1,000 fine. And I have seen one of my agents get $1,000 fine. So they are not playing games. So if you have it in that coming soon stage or status, then just know that you have a right to go in and do the things that you need to do to get it ready, but you can't show it to sell. Now come down right here, this active date right here, that active date right there is going to be the date that it goes into coming soon. So we had June the 10th, excuse me, June the 2nd is our effective date. Let's say we're going to go active or public in the public advertising on the 10th. You can put it in coming soon on the 6th. So you would put it in the 6th would be in here. So you kind of put it in between the time you list it and the time that it's going to actually be marketed publicly. Interestingly enough, on a coming soon, you can put a sign in the yard as long as you put a rider that says coming soon. You can put information on Facebook as long as you make it very clear it's coming soon. You cannot put it on a Facebook just as an ad for the property. You cannot just put a sign in the yard. But as long as it's labeled coming soon, you can do that. The coming soon form must be signed by me. So when you get the seller signatures, there's only 2 places here for seller signatures. You sign it and then you send it to me. The MLS considered the name that the MLS gives to the BIC is member participant. So anytime you see member participant, that means the BIC of the firm. And in this situation, it would be me. So when you send these forms out to be signed by your seller, just add my name on the list of people to sign. And you can designate the order in which they're signed. I would prefer that I not be the first. I would prefer that I would be the last. But nevertheless, make sure that you put me in that set. Now, the next thing to consider, and while I'm down here, let me show you the form, is what's called an office exclusive or a firm exclusive. Office exclusive is the name that's in the listing agreement. I'll show you in a moment. But firm exclusive is what the MLS here calls it. And right here is the form, and it looks very much, very much like the coming soon no-show form. It was released about the same time. A firm exclusive is one where the seller says, I do not want the public to know about my house being on the market. It was designed for someone who might be a public figure, like a NASCAR driver or a Panther or a musician or somebody who doesn't want people to know about their private life, and that was the design of it. But it has also been used in some other ways. For some sellers just don't want the information in MLS. And if they just don't want it in the MLS, then this is the way you get the listing. You can market to every agent in our firm. They can market to their sphere, but you cannot publicly market it, although that is going to the public to some degree. You cannot put a sign in the yard. You basically are trying to sell it in-house, but you're not choosing to sell it in-house to make sure that we get dual agency on it. You're basically doing it to accommodate the seller's desire for it not to go into MLS, which is probably not in the best interest in most situations, but it's an option that you can do. Now, what I want to point out to you is this. Remember I told you the member participant has to sign the coming soon the member participant also has to sign the firm exclusive. But the kicker here is, wait a minute, let me go down a little bit, is that it has to be done within 2 days. That's going to show the member participant. I have to sign it within 2 business days, and I have to register it at the MLS. I don't have to register the coming soon. That's within in-house, but MLS requires me as the broker, member participant, to sign and register that within 2 business days. So make sure that, again, if you get a firm exclusive, everybody signs, get it to me so that I can register it with MLS. Now let's go back up here to the listing agreement.
So I just wanted to clear up really quick about the effective date.
Okay.
So we have to put it into MLS 1 day after the effective date of the exclusive right to sell, unless we specify, like, or we delay it in the contract.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's within 1 day unless you make this choice. Let's see what right here. You have a choice under public marketing. You're either going to use your coming soon advertising, put a sign in the yard, or whatever these other things are. This would be under the public marketing, or you're going to come down to the next page and get the office exclusive. It's one or the other. It's public marketing or office exclusive. And in the public marketing, you have the option of going coming soon prior to that.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense? Like I said, this is part of the hardest thing about the whole listing agreement.
Yeah, because I'm saying, like, what? Yeah, like, what if they don't want to go coming soon? So would that only give me 1 day to?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it does. So in that case, you don't want to sign the listing agreement until you're ready to do it. And most of us have found that people have a way of changing their minds, and we want to get them to sign that listing agreement as quickly as we can. So you have to really be on the ball if you're going to get in one. At least they give you a full business day, to get it in. But yeah, that you got it. Yeah, that's a simple way of looking at it.
Okay.
So you both kind of understand that now?
Yeah.
If it's going to be firm exclusive, that second form, and you're going to initial right here, okay? Because the seller's not going to let the house be shown to anybody outside with that agent with our firm. Lockbox, make sure you get their agreement for you to put a lockbox, and please don't use combos. Oh, lousy! Please don't use combos. It's hard enough to let anybody and everybody come in your house. And particularly if people live there, you want to have the security that the Supra lock boxes, when you put your code in, it registers it in the box so that you or anybody showing, you can go back and check who's been in the property in case they didn't make an appointment, which they are required to do. But if they didn't, then you can check. So make sure and like I say, right at first, you're going to buy one, and then you're going to buy 2. You might have 3 or 4 eventually, but because that's pretty good investment. It's $100, and try to get sometimes agents sell them. So you might want to do that. Well, I have kept you almost 15 minutes over, and I appreciate you spending this time with me today. I love getting to see your faces and feeling like I know you now. Are there any questions in particular? I don't think these other things are as critical for you you can read them, but I really wanted to get through the marketing section with you. The dual agency, we did talk about that a little bit. If you have any problems with dual agency or understanding it, give me a call and we'll talk through it. But make sure you get these places right here initialed. If the seller will allow dual agency, the initial right here. And if they will allow dual agency, do they want you to be designated to just represent them, and we get somebody else to represent the buyer, then you want to get signed here. If they say, no, I don't want you to get anybody else, I want you to handle it all, then it'll be right here. So make sure, what we prefer would be at least this, let the firm be the dual agent. And then they can decide if they're going to let you represent both parties or just them. So at least aim to get that one. And the only other thing I want to put is this warning here. Whoops, right there, the wire fraud warning. Help people to understand about wiring. You'd think most everybody's heard about it, but not everybody has. If you're not around the real estate world, there's so much hacking that's been done. There's billions of dollars, according to the FBI, that have been hacked or confiscated by hacking into an attorney's email or a realtor's email. So it's really critical that the sellers or the buyers know that they must verbally give information to their attorney or to their bank. They don't send a fax, they don't send emails about wiring numbers and et cetera from that standpoint. Well, you all are super. I'm so glad to have you at Ballantyne. I love it that you want to come in here and learn some more about the forms. You've got the package now, and as you're going through it, and we were talking about earlier about the schedule. I will do North Carolina forms again the first Thursday of July. But next Thursday we'll be doing buyer forms. So we'll kind of go through those, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for giving me the extra time.
Awesome, thank you, Sever. I did have one question that's
okay, go ahead. Yeah,
not related to this.
That's all right.
So, is there any rules about us doing open houses for sale by owners, like for free, without having an agreement?
You can do that, but I don't want you to do it without an agreement. You can have an agreement for 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, because that covers you, because they're basically letting you come into their home, and you have, you need it for 3 days because you need a day to market it, and you want to have a day in case you need to bring an offer, so you want, we kind of want at least 3 days, which means that anytime in those 3 days that you would have exclusive representation. And you can even note in the listing agreement that this is specifically for open house.
Okay, so I wouldn't need to input it into the MLS, or like, would there be a loophole for that? Okay.
Because what you want, in that particular situation, you could just have a firm exclusive agreement.
Okay.
That keeps it from having to go in MLS. And thank you for mentioning that, because I'm still getting used to that.
Okay.
But yeah, but I've had some agents do pretty good doing FSBOs. We just haven't had many FSBOs in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we're going to start seeing some.
Especially
you start getting prepared, right?
Yeah, with the shift. Yeah, there's a house that I wanted to slowly they're still like, they still want to stay FSBO, but I want to slowly try to convert them. And I was like, maybe I can offer, I can show them value. So I was like, hey, why not host why not host an open house? I'm still a newer agent, so it'll be exposure for them and exposure for me. It's a win-win.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah.
I was like, what are the rules?
Well, one of the things that I don't know if we talked about before you came on the call, all sellers, even FSBOs, have to give the disclosures. You can give a FSBO the residential property disclosure, the MOG, and the lead-based. Okay.
Yeah.
You cannot give them any other forms to use, but but they are required, even if they sell FSBO, they are required to do the residential property disclosure.
Yeah, that was my plan, but some other agents already beat me to the punch. So.
Oh, did they? Oh,
yeah.
I see.
He was like, I already received a lot of these, and I was like, oh,
so you're going to do the open house and sell that sucker. Oh, I'm going to send you. I saw this neatest little thing about open houses to the 7th level, I think it is. I'm going to email it to both of you. And when I got off the call, and that think I love open houses. That's my favorite way to sell a house. I love open houses. So
Yeah.
well, you all take care.
Thank you.
Yeah. Miss Sever.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I cannot be there next week.
Okay, you want me to send you a recording?
Oh, okay. Or I can take the next month. Which one is better?
Sure. Like I said, the first Thursday of every month we do the listing, and the second Thursday is buyers.
Also, if possible, can you send me your recording? Okay,
sure
and also
send me an email. Remind me.
Okay, I will. Okay, I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Y'all take care.
Take care.
Sarah,
Bye.
Sarah, what's your number?
Oh, my phone number is 704 904 6625. That's my cell number.
25. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And my email is my full name @kw.com.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Awesome.
All right, dear. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Bye.